It was 11:30 p.m., and the lights in Seattle's tech corridor were mostly dark. Ryan Carter rubbed his bloodshot eyes, committed the last line of code to the Git repository, and finally ended his third straight day of overtime. Finally squashed that damn bug. He stretched, his spine cracking in protest. As a junior programmer who'd just gotten his full-time offer, Ryan knew his place in the city's tech ecosystem, the absolute bottom of the food chain. The constant crunch was standard, all-nighters were common, and his salary barely covered the rent on a tiny studio apartment in Rainier Valley. Ryan, kill the lights when you leave, his project lead said without looking up, fingers clattering on a mechanical keyboard. You got it, Mark, Ryan mumbled, slinging his backpack over his shoulder. Outside, the early autumn wind had a bite to it. Ryan pulled his thin jacket tighter, debating whether to take the night bus or splurge on a lift. A quick glance at his checking account balance, a paltry 3 figures, made the decision for him. Asterisk ding. Suitable host detected. The underdog system is now binding. Asterisk, a sudden electronic voice echoed in his head, startling him so badly he nearly dropped his phone. Who's there? Ryan scanned his surroundings. The street was empty except for a few leaves skittering across the pavement. Not a soul in sight. Asterisk, binding complete. Host, Ryan Carter. This system will assist you in completing suitor tasks to earn opportunities for advancement. First task, deliver a heartwarming breakfast to your goddess, Jessica Miller. Time limit, 7 a.m. tomorrow. Asterisk, Ryan froze, his brain rebooting. What the hell? A system? Jessica Miller? The campus queen from college? We graduated 2 years ago. I haven't talked to her since. Asterisk, task reward, $5,000 cash. Failure penalty, 3 consecutive days of severe indigestion. Asterisk, Ryan almost laughed. You've got to be kidding me. How is that even fair? I don't even know where she lives anymore. The system didn't respond. Instead, an address and a countdown timer materialized in his mind. 05:59:47. Damn it. Ryan checked the time. It was already 1 in the morning. If he didn't start now, he'd never make it. Half convinced he was hallucinating from sleep deprivation, Ryan turned and headed for a 24-hour convenience store. He bought bread, eggs, and ham. Back in his cramped apartment, he fumbled around for an hour, finally producing a barely passable sandwich. He warmed up a cup of milk and packed it all into an insulated bag. At 6:30 a.m., with dark circles under his eyes, Ryan stood before the imposing gates of Skyline Ridge, a luxury apartment complex. What am I even doing? He muttered to himself, the security guard's suspicious glare making his skin crawl. Asterisk, target has appeared at the south gate. Host, proceed immediately. Asterisk, Ryan looked up and saw a familiar figure emerge from the building. 2 years had done wonders for Jessica Miller. Her light brown hair was perfectly waved, her makeup flawless. A tailored beige trench coat revealed a slice of toned calf, and she wore a pair of heels whose brand Ryan didn't recognize but knew were expensive. Jessica. Ryan forced himself forward, his voice trembling with nerves. Jessica stopped, her brow furrowing as she took in the sight of the disheveled young man in a cheap, ill-fitting suit. A flash of confusion in her eyes quickly curdled into disgust. Ryan, what are you doing here? Her voice was ice, laced with contempt. I brought you breakfast. Ryan held out the insulated bag. I remember you said in college you liked ham and egg sandwiches. A few early commuters were starting to stare. Jessica's expression soured. She took a step back as if Ryan were holding a biohazard. Are you insane? She raised her voice deliberately. We haven't spoken since graduation, and you just show up here? Are you stalking me? Ryan's face burned. No, I just what? Thought you could win me over with breakfast? Jessica scoffed. She snatched the bag from his hand and, in full view of everyone, tossed it directly into a nearby trash can. Save it. A troll trying to score a supermodel. Without a backward glance, she walked toward a waiting BMW, leaving Ryan standing in a sea of whispers and scattered snickers. Asterisk, task complete. Reward has been distributed. Asterisk, complete my ass. Ryan screamed in his head. That wasn't an advancement. That was a public execution. Asterisk, a deposit of $5,000 has been made to your account. Asterisk, the text alert from his bank chimed on cue. Ryan pulled out his phone, his eyes widening at the notification. The money was real. Shock quickly gave way to a wave of cold fury. He turned and fled the scene of his humiliation, his mind racing for a way to get rid of this cursed system. As he passed a large digital billboard outside the complex, a business news segment caught his eye. Vance Industries CEO Eleanor Vance speaks at the Digital Economy Summit, proposing a new path for legacy companies in the digital age. The woman on the screen was in her mid-40s, dressed in an impeccably tailored navy pantsuit. Her features bore a striking resemblance to Jessica's, but carried a weight of maturity and authority. Ryan stopped dead in his tracks, a wild idea forming in his mind. System, what's the relationship between Eleanor Vance and Jessica Miller? Asterisk searching. Eleanor Vance is Jessica Miller's biological mother. Asterisk a cold smile touched Ryan's lips. Just as he was about to ask another question, the system let out a jarring screech of static. Asterisk warning. Higher value target detected. Rebinding. New target locked. Eleanor Vance. Task system resetting. Asterisk what? Wait a second. Ryan was floored. You're just switching targets? Just like that. Asterisk binding complete. New task. Demonstrate your professional competence to Eleanor Vance. Reward. Skill Master Chef. Time limit. 72 hours. Asterisk standing on the sidewalk. Ryan looked from the formidable woman on the billboard to the memory of her daughter's insult. A bold plan began to take shape. If I have to be an underdog, he muttered, why not aim for the top dog? Ryan sat in his tiny apartment, staring at his laptop screen, fingers flying across the keyboard. It had been 6 hours since the system switched targets, and he was still in shock. This system is so random. It just changes its mind whenever it wants. Ryan grumbled, typing notes into a secure file. Asterisk system alert. Target conversion is based on a value assessment. Eleanor Vance. Overall score 8.7. Jessica Miller. Overall score 6.2. Please focus on the new task. Demonstrate your professional competence to Eleanor Vance. Time remaining 66 hours, 12 minutes. Asterisk Ryan rolled his eyes. At least this task sounds less humiliating. He opened his browser and Googled Vance Industries Eleanor Vance. The page exploded with results. Ryan clicked on her Wikipedia entry, quickly scanning the bio of his new target. Eleanor Vance, 45, founder and CEO of Vance Industries, Stanford Business School graduate, divorced, one daughter. Ryan's eyes lingered on the words daughter, Jessica Miller, and his jaw tightened. Ed, scrolling through business articles, a headline from 3 months ago caught his attention. Asterisk Vance Industries digital transformation stalls, multiple projects delayed. Asterisk interesting. Ryan narrowed his eyes, pulling up a few professional forums and searching for specific keywords. Soon, a smattering of anonymous complaints surfaced. The Vance Industries API is a complete sieve. You can get into their employee portal with a weak password. Heard they got hacked a few times recently. Data leak. Ryan's eyes lit up. He opened a terminal window, typed a few commands, and then hesitated. System, if I use less than legal methods to get information, will there be a problem? Asterisk system alert. This system does not interfere with the host's methods, only evaluates task results. Reminder, all actions have consequences. Asterisk real helpful, Ryan muttered, but his finger had already hit enter. 2 hours later, a network topology map of Vance Industries was spread across his screen. He rubbed his aching eyes, his face flushed with excitement. Firewall rules haven't been updated in 3 years. The backend API has no rate limiting, and the employee system is still using SHA, one hashing. Ryan muttered to himself, meticulously documenting the vulnerabilities he found. This is basically a welcome mat for hackers. He was about to probe a financial system endpoint when he stopped short. Wait, what am I doing? Ryan lurched back, nearly falling out of his chair. This is a federal crime. Is some stupid system worth this? Asterisk task reward, skill Master Chef. Additional tip, Eleanor Vance suffers from chronic gastritis. Excellent cooking skills are a plus. Asterisk Ryan's mouth opened, then closed. He stared at the screen for a long moment before finally opening an anonymous email client. Legit channels. Stick to the legit channels. He mumbled as he typed. Discovered vulnerabilities, good faith report cover letter. That should work, right? In the carefully crafted email, Ryan detailed 3 high-risk vulnerabilities and their proposed fixes, deliberately holding back 1 or 2 key details. He attached his resume and a letter of interest, then sent it to the security reporting address on the Vance Industries official website. Okay now, Ryan stretched. Time to prep for an interview. He opened his closet, where 2 suits hung forlornly. One his parents had bought him for college graduation, the other a $99 special he'd picked up last week. Hope she doesn't remember I'm related to the troll, Ryan said to his reflection as he fumbled with a tie, then suddenly froze. Wait, system. Does Eleanor Vance know who I am? Asterisk system alert. Current target has no knowledge of host. Jessica Miller has not mentioned this morning's incident to her mother. Asterisk Ryan breathed a sigh of relief and went back to wrestling with a crooked tie. Vance Industries headquarters, 38th floor, CEO's office. Eleanor Vance put down her tablet and massaged her temples. The setting sun cast a golden glow on her profile, but couldn't hide the fatigue in her eyes. Another security report? She looked at her CTO, Mark Johnson, who was standing nervously by her desk. How many is that this week? Beads of sweat formed on Mark's forehead. Ms. Vance, this one's different. The reporter not only found the vulnerabilities, he provided solutions. And the thing is, the problems he pointed out are real. Eleanor took the file, her eyes scanning the technical details. Though not a programmer, years of business acumen allowed her to grasp the severity of the situation instantly. Data breach risk? Customer information might have been stolen. Her voice turned cold. At the last board meeting, when I asked you about system security, what was your answer? Mark's back was soaked. We did run penetration tests. Obviously not enough. Eleanor cut him off, dropping the file on her desk. Contact this person. Immediately. If he's as good as his resume says, hire him. Pay him well. But Ms. Vance, his background. I don't care if he crawled out of a basement. Eleanor's voice was like a razor's edge. As long as he can fix our problems. Just then, there was a knock on the door. The marketing director, Kyle Vance, poked his head in, a broad smile on his face. And Eleanor, I heard we have another system issue. Eleanor's expression darkened. It's Ms. Vance at the office. What is it? Kyle ambled in, his eyes flicking to the file on the desk. Tech department screwed up again? I'm just saying, instead of spending a fortune on an outsider, why not let my cousin give it a try? He just got back from the States with a master's in computer science. Your cousin can't even figure out the employee time card system, Eleanor said flatly. Mark, contact that person and set up an interview for tomorrow. Kyle, was there something else? The smile on Kyle's face twitched. Well, about next week's industry summit, I was thinking, you can go. Just bring back a decent report. Eleanor had already picked her tablet back up, a clear sign of dismissal. Kyle bowed slightly and backed out of the office. The moment the door clicked shut, the respectful look vanished. He glanced at Mark's retreating back and pulled out his phone, tapping out a message. Find out who's interviewing tomorrow. The next morning at 9, Ryan stood in the lobby of the Vance Industries Tower, his heart hammering against his ribs. He felt out of place in his $99 suit and old briefcase, a stark contrast to the polished marble floors. Mr. Carter. The receptionist eyed him. The security department interview is on the 25th floor. Thanks, Ryan said, his throat dry. In the elevator, he straightened his tie in the reflective metal wall. He'd barely slept, rehearsing answers to potential questions and preparing a few technical performances. Asterisk system alert. Target Eleanor Vance is currently in a meeting on the 28th floor. Host is advised to create an opportunity for contact. Asterisk, easier said than done. Ryan muttered to himself. How is an interviewee supposed to... The elevator doors opened on the 25th floor. Ryan was led into a conference room where 3 people were already seated. Mark Johnson, the CTO he'd met yesterday, a young HR representative, and... Ryan's breath caught. The man in the dark blue suit and slick back hair was staring at him with undisguised hostility. Ryan Carter? Mark stood to shake his hand. I'm Mark Johnson, CTO. This is Sarah from HR, and our marketing director, Kyle Vance. He insisted on sitting in. Kyle managed a synthetic smile. Company security is a serious matter. We in marketing are very concerned. Ryan gave a tight nod and sat down. He could feel Kyle's eyes on him like an X-ray, full of scrutiny and A strange sense of familiarity? Your resume says you have a bachelor's in software engineering, not cybersecurity. Mark began. How did you become so knowledgeable about system security? Ryan was prepared. I'm self-taught. In college, I actually found and helped fix a vulnerability in our course registration system. He paused. As for the Vance Industries system, I just used some basic penetration testing methods. Basic methods found problems our professional team missed. Mark's tone was skeptical. Ryan decided to take a risk. Could I have a laptop with network access? I can give you a live demonstration. 10 minutes later, the atmosphere in the room had completely changed. Mark and Sarah stared, wide-eyed, as Ryan typed streams of code into the command line, data scrolling rapidly down the screen. Here, Ryan pointed to a seemingly ordinary screen. This is your employee self-service login page. By modifying this parameter, he tapped a few keys, and the page suddenly jumped to an administrator's backend. Oh my God, the HR rep whispered. Kyle's face was ashen. That's impossible. Not only that, Ryan continued, because the API has no rate limiting, an attacker could easily launch a brute force attack. And he brought up a database view. All the passwords are encrypted with SHA-1, which is no longer secure. Mark was already mopping his brow with a handkerchief. This is a major problem. I can show you how to fix it, Ryan said calmly, assuming, of course, that I'm hired. Just then, the conference room door was pushed open. A person no one expected was standing there, Eleanor Vance herself. I heard there was a genius hacker putting on a show. Her voice was quiet, but it silenced the room instantly. Ryan's hand hovered over the keyboard, his heart skipping a beat. Up close, Eleanor had an even more powerful presence than on the billboard. A perfectly tailored charcoal suit, hair in a flawless chignon, and eyes that seemed to see right through you. Ms. Vance. Kyle was the first to jump up. We were just interviewing the person who found the system vulnerability, though I think he might be. Continue the demonstration. Eleanor walked directly behind Ryan, her gaze fixed on the screen. Show me just how vulnerable our system is. Ryan's fingers suddenly became incredibly nimble. He quickly switched to a new terminal window, entered a few lines of code, and a network topology map appeared. This is a simplified version of your company's internal network. Ryan's voice became steady and confident. The red markers are the weak points identified. The most critical is the finance system's API. Anyone can use it to pull the last 3 months of transaction records. Eleanor's eyebrow arched slightly. Show me. Ryan swallowed hard and entered the final piece of code. A few seconds later, a list of financial data filled the screen. Stop. Eleanor's voice turned cold. That's enough. The room was silent. Ryan could hear his own heartbeat. He stuck a glance at the system interface, asterisk task completion. 85%, 90%, 95%. Fix it, Eleanor said suddenly. Now. Ryan blinked, then snapped into action. His fingers flew across the keyboard, entering a series of commands, opening a configuration file, and changing a few parameters. Done, he said 5 minutes later. I closed that API endpoint, added an IP whitelist, and he hesitated, patched 2 other vulnerabilities I hadn't mentioned yet. Eleanor stared at the screen for a few seconds, then turned to Mark. Get his hiring paperwork done. Special consultant, security division. He reports directly to me. What? Kyle cried out. Ms. Vance, that's too reckless. We know nothing about this person. Eleanor gave him a cold look. He already knows more than enough. I'd rather have him on the inside where I can see him than on the outside. She turned to Ryan. Your salary will be half of the CTO's. 3-month probation. Any problems? Ryan's brain was still catching up. The system interface suddenly flashed asterisk task complete. Reward Master Chef has been granted. New task. Have dinner with the target within 72 hours. Reward. Crisis precognition beginner. No problem, Ryan stammered, then gathered his courage. But could I make one request? Eleanor had already turned to leave, but stopped at the door. Speak. I'd like to take you to dinner, Ryan said, immediately regretting how much it sounded like a pickup line. I mean, to discuss a holistic approach to improving system security. Some ideas are better discussed outside the office. The air in the room seemed to freeze. Kyle looked like he wanted to murder Ryan. Mark and Sarah stared at the floor, pretending to be invisible. Eleanor turned back, an unreadable expression on her face. Schedule it with my assistant after you're on board. With that, she strode out of the room. Asterisk Goodwill update. Eleanor Vance's impression of host, a talented nuisance. Current Goodwill, 15%. Asterisk. Ryan let out a long breath, only then realizing his back was soaked with sweat. As he packed up his laptop, Kyle suddenly leaned in close. I don't know what game you're playing, kid, he hissed, but I'll be watching you. Stay away from Miss Vance. Ryan didn't answer, but he knew the real challenge was just beginning. Ryan's onboarding process was surprisingly fast. Interview in the morning, contracts signed in the afternoon. By the next morning, he was standing in the tech department's open plan office. The HR rep gave him a quick tour, introduced him to a few key colleagues, and then led him to a small cubicle. This is your desk, she said with a smile. Mr. Johnson said you can take the morning to get settled. There's an all-hands tech meeting at 2 p.m. Ryan nodded, dropped his bag, and looked around. The space was small, but it was a major upgrade from the shared hot desks at his last job. More importantly, he glanced toward the elevators. It was only 3 floors below the CEO's office. Asterisk system alert. New task. Have dinner with the target within 72 hours remaining time. 62 hours, 18 minutes. Host is advised to act swiftly. Asterisk easy for you to say. Ryan muttered to himself as he started setting up his new computer. A message suddenly popped up on his screen. New guy in my office? Now, Mark Johnson. Ryan straightened his collar and walked quickly to the CTO's office. When he knocked and entered, he found not just Mark, but 3 other grim-faced engineers huddled around a monitor. Ryan, good timing. Mark waved him over. We got a problem. Ryan leaned in. The screen was filled with complex code and a stream of error logs. The order processing system crashed, an engineer in black-rimmed glasses explained. Since this morning, it deadlocks every time it hits the 1,000th order. It recovers after a reboot, but dies again at 1,000, another added. We've been at it all morning, can't find the cause. Mark rubbed his temples. The real problem is that the monthly order deadline is 3 p.m. today. If the system isn't working, we'll lose at least 20 million in orders. Ryan stared at the code for a few seconds. Did anyone update the database indexes recently? He asked suddenly. The engineers exchanged glances. The one in glasses hesitated. We did optimize the indexes on a few large tables last week. Can I see the change log? A few minutes later, Ryan was pointing at a line of SQL. The problem's likely here. The order of this composite index doesn't match the query conditions, so the query optimizer is choosing the wrong execution plan. But that doesn't explain why it fails at exactly 1,000 orders, the engineer argued. Ryan brought up another monitoring screen. Look here. The results of the first 999 queries are cached. The execution plan is only reevaluated on the 1,000th attempt. My guess is the statistics are out of date. The office fell silent. Mark was the first to speak. Can you fix it? I can temporarily disable this index. Or Ryan bit his lip. A bit riskier. I can force the correct execution plan without changing anything in the production environment. Which one is faster? The second one, but the risk is higher. If I'm wrong, it could cause even worse performance issues. Mark glanced at his watch. It's 1:40. You have 20 minutes to prepare. At the 2 p.m. meeting, I need you to present this solution to Ms. Vance. Ryan's stomach clenched. Ms. Vance is coming to the tech meeting. Of course. Mark gave him a strange look. The monthly order system is the company's lifeblood. She never misses this meeting. At 2 p.m. sharp, Ryan followed the tech team into a large conference room on the 25th floor. A massive, oval mahogany table dominated the space, already surrounded by department heads. His eyes were immediately drawn to the woman at the head of the table, Eleanor Vance, dressed today in a dark blue turtleneck. Her hair in a neat bun, was studying a document. Kyle Vance sat 2 seats to her right. He shot Ryan a venomous look as he entered. Let's begin, Eleanor said without looking up. Mark cleared his throat. Regarding the order system issue, our new security consultant, Ryan Carter, has identified the cause and a potential solution. Ryan, suddenly the center of attention, Ryan's palms began to sweat. He stood up, his knees feeling a bit weak. Hi, everyone. His voice trembled slightly. He cleared his throat and continued. The problem stems from a side effect of a database index optimization last week. As he explained, Ryan gradually found his confidence. He brought up his prepared charts, used simple language to explain the technical problem, and even drew a simplified execution flow on the whiteboard. So what's the solution? The CFO interrupted. There are two options. Ryan began to explain. Which one is faster? This time, the question came from Eleanor. She had finally looked up, her gaze sharp and focused on him. Ryan met her eyes. The second option, but it carries a higher risk. Success rate, 80%, and the impact if it fails. The system could be down for half an hour for a rollback. Eleanor turned to Mark. Your team's assessment? Mark didn't hesitate. I support Ryan's plan. The room fell silent, everyone waiting for Eleanor's decision. Her long, slender fingers tapped rhythmically on the tabletop. Do it, she said finally. Ryan will lead, Mark will supervise. I want to see the system back online before 3 o'clock. Ryan was stunned by how quickly she decided. Ms. Vance, aren't you worried? I hired you to solve problems. Eleanor cut him off, not to explain why you can't. Go. Asterisk Goodwill update. Eleanor Vance's impression of host. A promising technical talent. Current Goodwill, 20% asterisk. Ryan nodded and hurried out of the room with the tech team. As he walked toward the elevator, he felt a gaze on his back, but when he looked, he only saw the conference room door swinging shut. At 3:07 p.m., Ryan's fingers slammed down on the enter key. On the monitoring screen, the line graph suddenly smoothed out, and the order processing queue began to steadily decrease. It worked, the engineer in glasses shouted. The entire tech department erupted in applause and cheers. Mark slapped Ryan on the shoulder. Good job, kid. You just saved everyone's bonus this month. Ryan grinned, only then noticing his t-shirt was soaked with sweat. He was about to say something when an unexpected figure appeared at the office door, Eleanor. The applause died. Everyone stood up straight. Mark, report. Eleanor's voice was calm as ever. System is fully restored, Ms. Vance. All backlogged orders will be processed within the half hour. Eleanor nodded, her gaze shifting to Ryan. The solution was effective? Yes, Ms. Vance. We forced the correct execution plan, bypassing the problematic index. And the root cause? Inaccurate statistics caused the query optimizer to make a bad judgment call. I recommend we update statistics regularly and reevaluate those index changes. Eleanor seemed about to say something, but her phone rang. She glanced at the caller ID, and her expression instantly softened. I have to take this. She turned and walked into the hallway, but the office's glass door did little to muffle the conversation. Jesse, no, I told you can't go alone. I looked into that boy. His father has a history of alcoholism. I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to protect you. Don't hang up. Jesse. Eleanor's voice went from gentle to firm to resigned, ending in a nearly inaudible sigh. When she walked back in, she had resumed her cool, collected CEO persona, but Ryan noticed a flicker of exhaustion in her eyes. Team dinner tonight, Eleanor announced suddenly. To celebrate. It's on the company. Then she turned and left, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. Mark blinked. Did I hear that right? Ms. Vance never goes to department dinners. She didn't say she was going, a junior accountant whispered. Just that the company was paying. Ryan looked thoughtfully in the direction Eleanor had gone. A system alert chimed in his head. Asterisk side quest intel. Eleanor Vance's relationship with her daughter, Jessica Miller, is strained due to overprotectiveness. This information can be used to increase goodwill. Asterisk. At 7 p.m., 20-odd members of the tech department piled into a trendy steakhouse near the office. Ryan had tried to make an excuse to leave. His system task was still active, and he needed to figure out how to ask Eleanor to dinner, not go to a team outing. But Mark had unceremoniously dragged him into a cab. You're the man of the hour, Mark had laughed. No escaping. In the private dining room, the atmosphere quickly became boisterous. After a few beers, everyone started to relax. Ryan, seated in the guest of honor spot, was toasted repeatedly. Seriously, man, the engineer in glasses, whose name Ryan now knew was Will, slung an arm around his shoulder. How'd you know it was the index? We were stumped all morning. Just lucky, Ryan said modestly. I've run into similar issues before. Ryan's our lucky charm. Mark raised his glass. To the lucky charm. The room roared with laughter as they all drank. Just then, the door to the room opened and a server pushed in a cart. Your prime rib, enjoy. But everyone's gaze went past the prime rib to the person standing behind the server, Eleanor. She had appeared at the doorway, dressed in a simple white silk blouse and black trousers, looking less severe and more approachable than she did during the day. Ms. Vance. Mark nearly choked on his drink, scrambling to his feet. The others quickly stood as well, the room falling silent. Eleanor waved a hand. Sit, please. I was just passing by and wanted to see how everyone was doing. Mark quickly offered her the head seat. Please sit. We just got started. Eleanor hesitated for a moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, she walked over and sat down. A server immediately set a place for her. Ryan noted that she'd chosen a seat as far from him as possible. Is the system stable? She asked Mark. Completely, thanks to Ryan, Mark said enthusiastically. The kid's got skills. Eleanor's gaze swept over to Ryan, and she gave a slight nod. A good performance. Ryan, unsure what to say, just raised his glass. Thank you for your trust, Ms. Vance. For the next half hour, the atmosphere was a bit strange. With Eleanor present, no one dared to be too rowdy, and the conversation became more reserved. Ryan tried several times to start a conversation with her, but was always interrupted. Why is this creamed spinach so salty? The junior accountant suddenly complained. It doesn't taste like it usually does. The server hurried over to apologize. I'm so sorry. Our head chef is out sick today. The sous chef is running the kitchen. Let me try. Ryan picked up his fork, took a small taste, and frowned. The garlic was browned too much, and they didn't reduce the cream properly. You know about cooking? Mark asked, surprised. Ryan suddenly remembered his master chef skill reward. He shrugged. It's a hobby. For real. Will was skeptical. All right, what's wrong with this steak? Ryan took a bite of his own filet mignon. It's overcooked. They probably didn't let it rest long enough after searing. And the pan wasn't hot enough, so it steamed more than it seared. Everyone stared at him in amazement. Even Eleanor looked at him with curiosity. You've studied French cuisine? A little, Ryan said modestly, when an idea struck him. Actually, I really enjoy cooking. If you wouldn't mind, Ms. Vance, I can make you a few dishes that are easy on the stomach sometime. I hear. Rich food like this isn't always the best for you. The room went so quiet you could have heard a pin drop. Everyone stared at Ryan with a "have you lost your mind?" expression, directly inviting the CEO to eat a home-cooked meal. The nerve. Eleanor put down her fork, her expression unreadable. Just as everyone expected Ryan to be fired on the spot, she said, my assistant will contact you tomorrow to arrange a time. Asterisk task completion, 70%. 80%. Ding. Task, have dinner with the target achieved. Reward crisis precognition, beginner, has been granted. New task, solve one of Eleanor Vance's personal problems within 48 hours. Reward, hacking skill upgrade. Asterisk, Ryan nearly choked on his water. That counted? Apparently, the system considered her presence at the team dinner as having dinner with him. Even better, he'd just secured an opportunity to cook for her privately. Kyle suddenly stood up. Ms. Vance, a toast to you. Thank you for your concern for our department. Eleanor raised her glass, but took only a tiny sip. For the rest of the evening, Kyle monopolized her attention, successfully blocking any further attempts by Ryan to speak with her. Around 9 p.m., Eleanor rose to leave. Everyone stood again to see her off. At the door, she looked back at Ryan. My office, 10 a.m. tomorrow. We'll discuss the system security plan. Ryan nodded. Yes, Ms. Vance. After she left, the room buzzed with conversation. Holy crap, Ryan, you're a legend. We'll clap him on the back. The boss has never accepted a personal invitation from an employee. What kind of spell did you cast on her? Mark joked. Only Kyle sat in the corner, his face dark, as he sent a text message. Dig up everything you can on this kid. ASAP. Ryan pretended not to notice Kyle's hostility, but the newly acquired crisis precognition was making the back of his neck tingle, an indescribable intuition telling him that trouble was brewing. For now, though, he had more important things to consider. What should he cook for Eleanor tomorrow? And more importantly, What was her personal problem? And how could he help without overstepping and getting himself fired? Ryan's gaze drifted to the restaurant window. In the night sky, a sliver of a new moon was peeking out from behind clouds. Ryan stood in his own kitchen, staring at the simmering pot on the stove, sweat beading on his forehead. The system's master chef skill made his movements fluid and precise, but his stomach was doing flip-flops. White beans, 30 grams, yam, 20 grams, poria mushroom, 15 grams. Ryan recited the medicinal soup recipe to himself as he added the ingredients, and a bit of dried citrus peel to aid digestion. The morning light filtered through the blinds, casting a soft glow on the kitchen. Ryan checked his watch, 7:20 a.m. He had to get to the office by 8:30 to leave the healing broth on Eleanor's desk before she arrived. After the dinner last night, he'd specifically researched recipes for soothing an upset stomach. The system had told him Eleanor had chronic gastritis, and the rich steakhouse food had clearly not helped. Though she'd maintained her composure, Ryan had seen her press a hand to her stomach just before she left. "I hope this isn't too forward," Ryan whispered, pouring the finished broth into a thermos. Astra system alert. Task: solve one of Eleanor Vance's personal problems completion. 40%. Host is advised to seize the opportunity to show concern. Asterisk. Ryan gave a weak smile. "You sure this doesn't count as harassment, system?" No response. He sighed, packed the thermos in his bag, and double-checked the security proposal he prepared. The 10 a.m. meeting was his best chance to complete the system's task. Vance Industries Tower, 28th floor, executive suite. Ryan took 3 deep breaths in the elevator before forcing himself to step out. At this hour, the floor was nearly deserted, save for a cleaning lady polishing the company logo on the reception desk. "Morning," Ryan nodded, trying to look casual as he walked toward the CEO's office. The woman gave him a curious look. "Ms. Vance isn't in yet. I know I'm, from the tech department. I have a document to leave on her desk," Ryan said, holding up his file folder for effect. Luckily, she didn't ask any more questions and went back to her work. Ryan tiptoed to the office door and was surprised to find it slightly ajar. "Strange. Is she already here?" He pushed the door open gently. The office was empty, but the desk lamp was on and the computer was running. A half-empty coffee cup sat next to a stack of files, long gone cold. "Ms. Vance?" Ryan called out tentatively. No answer. He hesitated, then walked in and placed the folder in the center of her desk. As he was about to put down the thermos and leave, the door to the private resting lounge swung open. Eleanor was standing there, her face frighteningly pale. One hand was pressed against her stomach, the other gripping the doorframe. Strands of hair, damp with sweat, were plastered to her forehead. A stark contrast to her usual impeccable appearance. She was wearing a wrinkled blouse, her suit jacket draped over one shoulder. "Ryan." Her voice was weak with surprise. "How did you—" Before she could finish, her body pitched forward. Ryan lunged, catching her just as she was about to fall. "Ms. Vance, are you okay?" Eleanor shook her head, trying to stand, but a sharp pain made her double over again. Ryan didn't hesitate, half carrying her to the sofa. "Stomach again?" he asked softly. "Do you have any medicine?" Eleanor pointed to the bottom drawer of her desk. Ryan rushed over and found a bottle of antacids and a small pillbox. To his surprise, the pillbox was almost empty, with only 2 tablets left. "You take these often?" he asked, pouring her a glass of warm water and handing it to her with the pills. "When the stress gets bad." Eleanor swallowed the pills and leaned back against the sofa, her eyes closed. Ryan noticed the dark circles under her eyes, a clear sign of chronic sleep deprivation. He hesitated, then pulled the thermos from his bag. I made some broth. It's supposed to be good for your stomach. I was just going to leave it on your desk." He opened the lid, and the clean scent of herbs filled the air. "It's a ginger and lemon broth, very gentle." Eleanor opened her eyes, staring at the steaming thermos in surprise. You made this for me. I noticed you seemed uncomfortable after dinner last night." Ryan avoided her gaze, pouring a small cup of the broth. "It's not a prescription or anything, but it's gentler than painkillers." Eleanor took the cup and took a careful sip. The temperature was perfect, and the taste was surprisingly good, a subtle sweetness underlying the clean flavors. A wave of warmth spread through her stomach. "It's delicious," she said softly, taking a few more sips. "Thank you." Those two simple words made Ryan's heart race. He noticed her fingers were long and slender, her nails short and neat, with no polish, only the faint indentation of a ring on her left hand. "You should get more rest," Ryan couldn't help but say. "Relying on painkillers all the time is terrible for your stomach lining." Eleanor set the empty cup down, raising an eyebrow. "Are you a doctor?" "No, but my dad used to have stomach problems." Ryan told a small lie. He couldn't very well say the system told him. A friend of his gave him the recipe. Eleanor nodded thoughtfully, her color already returning. She tried to stand, but Ryan stopped her. "Rest for at least 10 more minutes. The medicine needs time to work." His tone was surprisingly firm. "The company won't collapse if you take a 10-minute break." To his surprise, Eleanor actually sank back into the sofa. She closed her eyes, her voice tired. "Do you know how many emails I get a day?" "I couldn't guess." "An average of 200. At least 50 of them require my personal attention," she said softly. "The board, clients, government regulators. Everyone is waiting for a reply from me." Ryan listened quietly. 10 years ago, this company had 30 people. Now it has over 3,000. Eleanor continued, almost as if talking to herself. "Everyone depends on me to make the decisions. Sometimes I feel like a server that's about to overload." The metaphor made Ryan smile. "Then you need a better cooling system and some load balancing." Eleanor's lips curved slightly. "Your solution yesterday was very effective. You not only fixed the problem, you avoided any downtime." She suddenly opened her eyes, her gaze locking with his. "Why did you choose to come to Vance Industries? With your skills, you could have gone to a bigger tech firm." Ryan's heart pounded. The question was unexpected. He couldn't tell her the truth, that a system had bonded to her daughter and then randomly switched to her. I admire your business philosophy," he said, choosing his words carefully. "Especially your speech on the digital transformation of legacy companies. A lot of tech companies only understand tech, not business, and vice versa. Vance Industries is finding that balance." Eleanor's gaze intensified. "You saw my speech?" "More than one," Ryan said, relaxing slightly as the conversation turned to his area of expertise. "Your article in the Harvard Business Review on smart manufacturing was also very insightful." Although, he stopped himself. "Although what?" she pressed. Ryan hesitated, then decided to risk it. "I think you underestimate the potential of blockchain in supply chain finance. Not cryptocurrency, but smart contracts and traceability systems." Eleanor sat up straighter, a look of surprise in her eyes. "Go on." For the next 20 minutes, they engaged in a deep technical discussion. Ryan explained his ideas for overhauling the Vance Industries supply chain, and Eleanor listened intently, occasionally asking questions or offering counterpoints. "Interesting," she said finally, glancing at her watch. "We can start our 10 o'clock meeting early." "But," she gestured to her disheveled state, "I need 10 minutes to pull myself together." Ryan stood up tactfully. "I'll go prepare my presentation materials." "Ryan," Eleanor called after him. "Thank you for the broth." Asterisk Goodwill update. Eleanor Vance's impression of host. A thoughtful and capable young man. Current Goodwill, 25% asterisk. The morning meeting went smoothly. Ryan's security proposal was approved by Eleanor, who even signed off on several budget requests on the spot. As he left the CEO's office, he found Kyle Vance waiting outside, a fake smile plastered on his face. Well, Mr. Consultant," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Quite a long chat with Ms. Vance." Ryan nodded, not wanting to engage. "We had technical matters to discuss in detail." Kyle stepped closer, his voice low. "I looked into your background. Graduated from a second-rate state school. Last job was at some no-name software company. What kind of trick did you pull?" Ryan's stomach tightened, but he kept his face impassive. "If you have questions about my qualifications, Mr. Vance, you can take them up with the CEO." "Don't get cocky," Kyle sneered. "I haven't forgotten what you did to my cousin." "Your cousin?" Ryan blinked, then it hit him. Jessica Miller. No wonder Kyle had been targeting him from the start. Kyle seemed pleased with Ryan's reaction. "That's right. I know you're the creep who was harassing her. Just you wait. I'll make sure you don't last a week at Vance Industries." He turned and walked away, leaving Ryan standing there, his stomach in knots. This was bad. Kyle wasn't just the marketing director. He was Eleanor's nephew and Jessica's cousin. If he started spreading lies to Eleanor, asterisk system alert, hostile action detected, crisis precognition activated. Within 72 hours, Kyle Vance will take action to undermine host's reputation. Asterisk. Ryan rubbed his temples. The new skill was useful, but the information was too vague. He needed more intel. Back at his desk, Ryan opened his laptop, debating whether to use his hacking skills to investigate Kyle. Just then, an email popped up, an alert from the financial system. As a security consultant, Ryan had access to all system alerts. This email showed unusual activity on a marketing department vendor payment account. 3 large transfers over the past 2 weeks, all to a company called Starlight Tech. Ryan frowned. The name sounded familiar. A quick search revealed it was a small company founded just 3 months ago. The registered owner was Kyle's younger brother. Kyle's brother. Ryan's eyes narrowed. Interesting. He dug deeper into the transactions. On the surface, it was a digital advertising partnership, and all the paperwork was in order. But Ryan's gut told him something was wrong. By cross-referencing several databases, he found that these so-called ad placements had no corresponding activity. A classic money laundering scheme. Ryan muttered. The problem was how to handle it. Reporting it directly might look like retaliation, given their recent conflict. Asterisk system alert. Task: solve one of Eleanor Vance's personal problems. Completion: 65%. Suggestion: loyalty is more important than ability. Asterisk. Ryan gritted his teeth and decided to take a risk. He compiled the evidence into a concise report and sent it directly to Eleanor's private email, marking it urgent and confidential. After sending the email, he realized his back was soaked. This move would either earn him Eleanor's complete trust or get him fired. At 3 p.m., Ryan was summoned to the CEO's office. When he walked in, the tension was so thick he could taste it. Eleanor sat behind her desk, her face a thunderous mask. Kyle stood to the side, pale and sweating profusely. Ryan, Eleanor's voice was like ice. Are you certain the contents of this report are accurate? Ryan nodded. I checked it 3 times. 3 transfers in the past 2 weeks, totaling $240,000. The corresponding ad campaign records are fabricated. You're lying. Kyle exploded. And Eleanor, don't listen to him. He's getting back at me. It's Ms. Vance at the office, Eleanor said coldly. And I've already had the internal audit department verify it. The evidence is conclusive. Kyle looked like he'd been punched in the gut, his bluster vanishing instantly. Eleanor turned to Ryan. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. Effective today, you are being promoted to my special assistant. You'll report directly to me. Your salary is increased by 50%. Ryan's eyes widened. Special assistant? That meant he'd be involved in high-level decisions, with access to core company secrets. Kyle looked murderous. Ms. Vance, this is insane. He's just a new hire who's been here for a few days. Enough. Eleanor's voice was sharp. Kyle, you are suspended pending a full investigation. Now get out. Kyle opened his mouth, then closed it. He shot Ryan a venomous glare and stormed out of the office. Only Ryan and Eleanor remained. The silence felt heavy. You're not afraid of making enemies, Eleanor said suddenly, her tone softening slightly. Ryan answered honestly. I am, but I'm more afraid of betraying your trust. Eleanor studied him, her gaze deep. Why did you come directly to me? You could have gone through the official channels. Because. Ryan took a deep breath. I thought you would want to know first. As a leader, the worst thing isn't an employee making a mistake, it's being kept in the dark. Eleanor nodded slightly, a flicker of appreciation in her eyes. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., I'm meeting with the heads of internal audit and legal. You'll be there. Yes, Ms. Vance. Now, Eleanor gestured to the door of her private lounge. There's a small kitchen in there. Since you're such an expert on stomach-friendly food, why don't you teach my personal chef the correct recipe for that broth? Ryan blinked in surprise. You want me to cook now? I have a business dinner tonight. Eleanor explained, a rare moment of personal disclosure. I like to eat something first. Asterisk task complete. Eleanor Vance's personal problem, trust crisis, has been solved. Reward, hacking skill upgrade. New task. Accompany Eleanor Vance to a business event within 1 week and protect her from harm. Reward, combat proficiency. Asterisk. Asterisk Goodwill update. Eleanor Vance's impression of host. A trustworthy confidant worth cultivating. Current Goodwill. 30% asterisk. As Ryan followed Eleanor toward the lounge, he knew the rules of the game had changed. He was no longer just an employee. He had entered Eleanor's inner circle. That meant more opportunity, but it also meant far greater risk. And Kyle Vance, he knew, would not go down without a fight. Ryan stood in front of the mirror, tugging at the unfamiliar bow tie. The rented tuxedo felt like a straitjacket, a costume for a role he wasn't meant to play. A little higher on the left. No, the right. He muttered, his fingers fumbling. His phone lit up with a text from Eleanor. Lobby at 7 p.m. sharp. Don't be late. Ryan checked the time. 6:40. He gave his hair a final, desperate blast of hairspray, grabbed his briefcase, and bolted from his apartment. This was his 5th day as special assistant, and his first time accompanying Eleanor to a formal business event. Asterisk system alert. Task, accompany Eleanor Vance to a business event and protect her from harm. Remaining time, 6 hours. Current progress, 15%. Asterisk, protect her from harm. Ryan wondered in the back of the cab. Is something dangerous going to happen tonight? The system remained silent. Since his goodwill had reached 30%, it had become more concise, offering fewer hints, as if pushing him to act on his own. The lobby of the Peninsula Hotel was a glittering spectacle of crystal and gold. Eleanor was already waiting, a vision in a dark green velvet gown, her hair swept into an elegant updo, emerald earrings dangling from her lobes. Punctual. Good. She looked him over, then reached out and adjusted his bow tie. First time in a tux. Ryan's ears burned. First time this formal. Remember, tonight's negotiation is critical. Blue Ocean Technologies wants to invest in our smart home division, but their CEO, David Chun, is an old fox, Eleanor said in a low voice. Your job is to watch the technical clauses. Ryan nodded, following her toward the elevators. Her perfume, a subtle blend of cedar and citrus, was crisp and elegant. In the elevator, Eleanor asked suddenly, "What do you know about brain-computer interface technology?" "A little," Ryan answered smoothly. Non-invasive EEG headsets have limited precision right now, mainly used in gaming and medical rehab. Blue Ocean's core tech is their signal processing algorithm. A flicker of approval crossed Eleanor's eyes. Good. They want to integrate that tech with our smart home platform, but their asking price is too high. The negotiation took place in a top-floor suite. The Blue Ocean team consisted of 6 people, led by David Chun, a portly man in his 50s with a jovial smile and sharp eyes. "Eleanor, a pleasure to finally meet you," he said, shaking her hand warmly. "And this is my special assistant, Ryan Carter," Eleanor said briskly. David's smile faltered for a fraction of a second before becoming even warmer. A rising star. Ryan noticed a young man with glasses on the opposing team, giving him a long, evaluative look. The negotiation quickly moved to technical details. Ryan sat quietly, taking notes, only speaking up at key moments. The first half hour went well, until they reached the intellectual property clause. Blue Ocean's lawyer slid a revised contract across the table. "We've made a few adjustments here based on our discussion," the lawyer said, pushing up his glasses. Eleanor scanned the document, her brow furrowing. Ryan leaned in to look and immediately spotted a subtle change. The original draft stipulated that jointly developed technology would be co-owned. The new version added a line in the fine print of an appendix, including but not limited to all improvements and derivative technologies based on Vance Industries' existing systems. "Ms. Vance," Ryan said softly, "can I have a word?" They moved to a corner of the room. "They're playing word games," Ryan explained quickly. "Under this clause, any future upgrade to our existing smart home platform would become their co-owned IP. Eleanor's eyes turned to ice. "Are you sure? Check the definitions section in Appendix 3. The language is deliberately vague." Eleanor's lips thinned, a micro-expression Ryan had learned meant she was suppressing anger. Back at the table, her smile was flawless. "David, regarding the IP clause, we'll need to stick to the original version." David feigned surprise. "Why? This is perfectly fair to both sides." "Is it?" Eleanor pushed the contract back. Then perhaps you can explain why the definition of derivative technology in Appendix 3 has been so broadly expanded. The air in the room went still. The smile vanished from David's face. He squinted at Ryan, then burst out laughing. A misunderstanding. A complete misunderstanding. Well, what did you do? The young man with glasses quickly apologized. Sorry, Mr. Chun, I must have grabbed the wrong version. The rest of the negotiation was tougher, but more honest. They reached a preliminary agreement, with specific terms to be ironed out next week. As they were leaving, David Chun made a point of shaking Ryan's hand. Sharp eyes, young man. What did you study law? Just a habit from programming, Ryan replied calmly. You learned to read the code carefully. Asterisk Goodwill update. Eleanor Vance's impression of host, a reliable right-hand man. Current Goodwill. 35% asterisk the post-negotiation reception was held in the hotel ballroom. Surrounded by clinking glasses and industry titans, Ryan felt like a fish out of water. He stood in a corner with a glass of sparkling water, watching Eleanor move effortlessly through the crowd. Not used to these events? Eleanor appeared at his side. Ryan admitted it honestly. I can't tell which fork I'm supposed to use. Eleanor let out a genuine laugh, the sound softening the lines around her eyes. Come with me. She led him to the buffet table, patiently explaining the nuances of formal dining etiquette like a gentle teacher. Ryan was surprised to see this approachable side to the powerful CEO. Eleanor, a gruff voice interrupted, heard the talks with Blue Ocean went well. The speaker was a man in his 60s with impeccably coiffed silver hair, a beautiful young woman on his arm. Mr. Harrington. Eleanor's expression became polite but distant. Just a preliminary discussion. And this young man is... Mr. Harrington's gaze landed on Ryan. My special assistant, Ryan Carter. Oh, Harrington gave Ryan a knowing look. Finally decided to find some companionship. Eleanor, a woman needs a man in her life, no matter how busy she is. You're mistaken, Arthur. Eleanor cut him off, her voice several degrees colder. Ryan is the technical lead on our smart home project. Ryan felt a surge of discomfort at the man's obvious insinuation. Before he could speak, Eleanor touched his arm lightly. Let's go over there. Once they were out of earshot, she said in a low voice, Don't mind him. That's Arthur Harrington. He's one of the founding shareholders and thinks it gives him the right to say whatever he wants. Has he suggested things like that to you before? Ryan asked carefully. Eleanor scoffed. 3 years ago, he proposed I marry his nephew, saying, a woman ultimately needs a man to lean on. The next day, I bought out 5% of his shares. He's been much quieter at board meetings ever since. Ryan couldn't help but smile. Well played. The business world is a battlefield, Eleanor said, looking at Harrington's back across the room. Especially for a female leader, there's always someone trying to tear you down. Ryan was about to reply when a commotion at the entrance caught his attention. A familiar figure made him freeze. Jessica Miller. She was wearing a pink cocktail dress, arm in arm with a tall young man, laughing with a group of friends. Ryan instinctively tried to duck behind Eleanor, but it was too late. Mom. Jessica's eyes widened. What are you doing here? Her gaze shifted to Ryan, and her expression went from surprise to contempt. You? Eleanor frowned. Jessie? Who let you into this event? Will invited me. Jessica tilted her chin up, gesturing to the young man beside her. He's David Chin's nephew from Blue Ocean. Ryan then realized the young man was the same one with glasses from the negotiation. Small world. Jessica was relentless. Mom, do you know who this is? He's the creep who was stalking and harassing me the other day. And now he's your special assistant? She spat out the last 2 words, drawing stares from those nearby. Eleanor's expression turned to ice. Jessie, watch your tone. Am I wrong? Jessica's voice cracked. You'd rather trust a total stranger than your own daughter. It's been like this my whole life. Will, the nephew, stood awkwardly to the side. Guests began to whisper, some even pulling out their phones to film. Ryan felt a wave of dizziness. The system's voice screamed in his head, emergency. Mother-daughter conflict will damage Eleanor's reputation. Immediate intervention required, He took a deep breath and stepped forward. Ms. Miller, I think this is a misunderstanding. Bringing you breakfast was presumptuous, and I apologize. But my relationship with your mother is purely professional. Liar. Tears welled in Jessica's eyes. Mom, he told me he liked me, and now. Eleanor's gaze darted between them, her face growing darker by the second. Ryan knew if he didn't control the situation, the fallout would be disastrous. Ms. Vance, he said, turning to Eleanor, his voice firm and professional. Could I have a word? There's an urgent technical detail from today's negotiation that we need to confirm. The professional request gave Eleanor a graceful exit. She gave her daughter a cold look. We'll talk at home. She then nodded to Ryan. To the lounge. As they left the ballroom, Ryan glanced back. Jessica was standing there, tears streaming down her face, as Will tried clumsily to comfort her. Arthur Harrington and other guests looked on with unconcealed glee. Asterisk task completion, 65%. Crisis temporarily averted, but root cause remains. Asterisk in the hotel lounge. Eleanor paced back and forth, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. Explain, she said finally, her voice sounding like it was scraped from a glacier. Ryan knew there was no way out. I admit a week ago I did try to approach your daughter, but it was... He scrambled for a plausible explanation, but realized a partial truth was his only option. But I quickly realized it was a mistake. As soon as I got the interview opportunity with Vance Industries, my focus became entirely professional. So your skills are real? Not just some elaborate scheme to get close to my daughter. Of course they're real, Ryan said urgently. The negotiation today, the system vulnerability, how could I fake any of that? Eleanor stared at him for a long time before sighing and sitting down. Jessie has been like this since she was little, always making a scene over nothing. Ryan chose his words carefully. Perhaps Ms. Miller feels insecure. What do you mean? Just an observation, Ryan said with a shrug. You're very protective of her, but you're also often absent because of work. That contradiction might make it hard for her to know how to get your attention. Eleanor looked stunned, as if she'd never considered that angle. She slowly shook her head. You don't understand. After her father left, I swore I would give her the best protection. The world can be a vicious place, especially for women. But too much protection is its own kind of cage, Ryan said softly, especially for a daughter who's already an adult. Eleanor looked up, a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. Was I wrong? The sudden question sent a jolt through Ryan. Even someone as powerful as Eleanor had moments of uncertainty. It's not about right or wrong, he said, choosing his words. It's just, maybe what she needs isn't only protection, but also trust and space. Eleanor was silent for a long time. She finally glanced at her watch. The reception isn't over. We have to go back. Ryan understood this was her way of ending the conversation and nodded. Back in the ballroom, Jessica and her friends were gone. For the rest of the evening, Eleanor was the picture of professional perfection, as if the earlier conflict had never happened. But Ryan noticed her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, which often drifted into the distance. After the reception, Eleanor made an unexpected suggestion. Let's go back to the office. I have some documents to review. Ryan knew it was just an excuse, but he didn't call her on it. At 1 a.m., the lights on the 38th floor of the Vance Industries tower were still on. Ryan took 2 boxes of stir-fried noodles out of a delivery bag and placed them gently on Eleanor's desk. You should eat something. Eleanor looked up from her files, her eyes weary. You're still here. You never said I could clock out, Ryan said with a half smile. Eleanor shook her head, but took one of the boxes. What do you think of the rooftop? It's too stuffy in here. 5 minutes later, they were sitting on lounge chairs on the company's rooftop terrace, overlooking the city lights. The autumn night wind was cool, and Eleanor wrapped herself in the suit jacket Ryan offered her. When I started the company, Jessie was only 5, Eleanor said suddenly, her voice so quiet it was almost lost in the wind. When she was in elementary school, I barely made it to any parent-teacher conferences. I was in another country closing a deal during her middle school graduation. For high school. Ryan listened quietly, not interrupting. Now she wants her independence. And I'm the one who can't let go, Eleanor said with a bitter smile. It's ironic, isn't it? It's not too late, Ryan said softly. She's only 20. You have plenty of time to get to know each other again. Eleanor turned to look at him. You're much more mature than your age. Kids from poor families grow up fast, Ryan smiled. I started working part-time to pay for school when I was 15. The stars were faint but clear in the night sky. They ate the lukewarm noodles in silence, but felt more satisfying than any of the gourmet food at the reception. Ryan, Eleanor asked suddenly, "Why are you helping me? You could have just watched the drama unfold tonight." Ryan's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't mention the system task, so he settled on a half-truth. "Because you deserve to be treated with sincerity, not just as a boss, but as a person." In the moonlight, Eleanor's gaze softened. She didn't say anything more, but in that moment, an invisible wall between them seemed to crumble. Asterisk task complete. Successfully protected Eleanor Vance from harm. Reward, combat proficiency. New task. Within 72 hours, uncover and thwart a conspiracy against Eleanor Vance. Reward, business acumen, beginner. Asterisk goodwill update. Eleanor Vance's impression of host. A friend to be trusted. Current goodwill, 40%. Ryan looked out at the glittering city, a mix of emotions churning inside him. The rising goodwill should have been a good thing, but he was finding it harder and harder to tell if he was completing a task or if he genuinely wanted to be closer to this strong, fragile woman. Ryan was jolted awake by the shrill ring of his phone. The sky outside was just beginning to lighten. The name Eleanor Vance on the screen shocked him into full consciousness. "Ms. Vance?" he answered, his voice thick with sleep. "Look at today's Financial Chronicle." Eleanor's voice was ice. "Be at my apartment in half an hour." The line went dead. Confused, Ryan fumbled with his phone, pulling up the online edition of the paper. The headline screamed at him in bold letters: "Vance Industries CEO and the special relationship with her young assistant." The subheadline was even more lurid. "Exclusive, a look inside the private life of a business titan." Ryan's finger trembled as he tapped the link. A grainy, blown-up photo took up half the screen. It was from the other night on the rooftop, showing him draping his jacket over Eleanor's shoulders. The angle was cleverly chosen to make the gesture look like an intimate embrace. The article was a masterpiece of innuendo, implying their relationship was far from professional and quoting an inside source who claimed Ryan's rapid promotion was due to special favors. Shit. Ryan slammed his fist on the mattress. He threw on his clothes, grabbed his keys, and ran out the door. The morning streets were empty, and the cabs sped through the city. Ryan's mind raced. Who would do this? Kyle? Arthur Harrington? That nephew of David Chen's? The photo was clearly taken from a distance. The photographer would have needed to be in the office building across the street to get that angle. Eleanor's apartment was in the Summit, the most exclusive high-rise in the city center. In the elevator, Ryan tried to compose himself, but he found his greatest fear wasn't the scandal itself, but how Eleanor would see him. Would she think he had ulterior motives? The elevator opened directly into her penthouse. Eleanor was waiting for him. She was in casual home clothes, her hair in a loose ponytail, her face free of its usual makeup, but she still radiated an intimidating aura. Ryan noticed the dark smudges under her eyes. She clearly hadn't slept. "Come in." She turned and walked into the living room, her voice terrifyingly calm. The apartment was surprisingly minimalist, all black, white, and gray, with almost no personal touches. An open laptop and several files sat on a coffee table next to a half-empty cup of cold coffee. "Sit." Eleanor gestured to the sofa, then stood by the window with her back to him. The stock dropped 7% at the opening bell. A knot formed in Ryan's stomach. "Ms. Vance, I swear, that photo is completely—" "It's the angle, I know." She turned around, her expression one of shocking composure. "The question isn't whether the photo is real, but who took it, and why they released it now." Ryan let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. At least she didn't suspect him. "I checked the angle. It must be from the office building across the street. The vacant office on the 32nd floor." "Already checked." Eleanor cut him off. "It was rented for 2 hours last night, using a fake ID." Ryan blinked. "You've already investigated? Did you think I would just sit here and wait for the crisis to hit?" Eleanor gave a cold smile. "The question is, who's pulling the strings?" Ryan thought for a moment. "Kyle? He was suspended. He has a motive. Too obvious." Eleanor shook her head. "He's not that stupid." "Or Arthur Harrington?" At the reception the other night. Eleanor's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, and her face hardened. "Jesse." The moment she answered, Jessica's shrill, crying voice was audible even to Ryan. "Mom, do you have any idea what everyone at school is saying? Richard just called me. He said you." Her voice dissolved into static, replaced by a deep, male voice. "Eleanor, you've gone too far this time." The man's voice oozed false concern. "Jessie can't handle this kind of stimulation." Eleanor's knuckles went white as she gripped the phone. "Richard Sterling, you stay away from my daughter." "I'm her father." The man's voice turned cold. "And given your recent behavior, I'll be petitioning the court to change the custody arrangement. Jessie may be an adult, but psychologically—" Eleanor hung up. Her breathing was ragged, her face a deathly white. It was the first time Ryan had ever seen her look so rattled. "Ms. Vance," he said, taking a hesitant step forward. "My ex-husband, Richard Sterling," Eleanor's voice was hoarse, "hasn't contacted me in 10 years, and now he shows up playing the concerned father." Ryan suddenly understood. "You think he's behind the scandal?" "No, he doesn't have the brains for it," Eleanor said, walking to her laptop. "But he'll absolutely use it to his advantage." On the screen was a newly arrived email. Ryan leaned in and saw it was a notice for an emergency board meeting. Arthur Harrington, backed by 3 other board members, was demanding a discussion of the corporate image crisis. Of course, Eleanor sneered. One thing after another. Ryan's mind raced. "We need a crisis PR strategy. First, issue a statement denying the rumors. Second, find the person behind this. And third, you're suspended," Eleanor said suddenly. Ryan froze. "What?" "Temporarily," she clarified. "At least on the surface. We have to give the board something." Ryan's heart sank. Logically, he understood it was a necessary move, but emotionally. "I understand," he said quietly. "I'll go clear out my desk." "Wait," Eleanor stopped him. "I need you to keep investigating, privately, using your special skills." She gave him a pointed look. "I suspect our internal network has been compromised." Ryan nodded, then remembered something. "Ms. Vance, about your daughter." "I'll handle it." Eleanor's tone was firm again. "You go home and get ready. Meet me at the cafe in the Old Town at noon." As he left the building, the morning sun was bathing the streets in light. Ryan stood on the sidewalk, feeling utterly powerless for the first time. The system's voice chimed his head, *emergency task update. Uncover and thwart a conspiracy against Eleanor Vance. Time remaining, 56 hours. Current progress, 20%. Hint. The source of the crisis is within the company's internal network. A full scan for unusual activity is recommended. Ryan took a deep breath and hailed a cab. He had work to do. The next 24 hours were a nightmare. Ryan publicly packed his things and left the office, but secretly hacked back into the Vance Industries network. Through a series of complex maneuvers, he traced unusual activity to a computer in the marketing department. Someone was regularly sending internal documents to an external email address. "Kyle's computer," Ryan muttered to his laptop, but he wasn't the one using it. The key breakthrough came in the early hours of the next morning. While tracking the external email, Ryan discovered a link to an account associated with the Richard Sterling Investment Group. Even more shocking, Arthur Harrington's personal assistant had been in frequent contact with that email address over the past week. So, it's Harrington and Kyle working together? But why involve Richard Sterling? Ryan rubbed his sore eyes, unable to connect the dots. At noon, in the Old Town Cafe, Ryan reported his findings to Eleanor. She listened in silence. "Equity," she said finally. "Richard gave up his claim to Vance Industries stock when we divorced, but now he might be trying to regain influence through Jessie. Arthur has always wanted to control the company. They've teamed up. And Kyle. Just a pawn," Eleanor said with a cold smile. "Arthur promised to save his job in exchange for dirt on me." Ryan hesitated. "Ms. Vance, with all due respect, you need to deal with Kyle firmly, even if he is family." "I know," Eleanor cut him off. "I've already had legal draw up the paperwork to press charges. But the immediate problem is tomorrow's board meeting." She took a document from her bag. "This is my proposed crisis management plan. See if there are any technical loopholes." Ryan read it carefully, press statements, legal action, even an open letter to Jessica. Every step was meticulously planned, except for one thing. "There's no plan for how to handle me," Ryan pointed out. Eleanor frowned. "What do you mean?" "The board needs a scapegoat," Ryan said calmly. You should officially fire me and issue a statement saying you'll be investigating my inappropriate conduct. No, Eleanor refused flatly. It's the most logical move, Ryan insisted. Once the storm passes, you can always. I said no. Eleanor's gaze sharpened. I don't sacrifice innocent people. A warmth spread through Ryan's chest, but it only strengthened his resolve. Then let's compromise. I'll resign voluntarily, citing personal career development. It neither confirms nor denies the rumors, leaving us some room to maneuver. Eleanor gave him a long, searching look. Why? Why would you do this for me? Ryan opened his mouth, but the prepared excuses died on his lips. He couldn't tell her about the system, but he refused to lie in the face of such a raw, direct question. Because he settled on a partial truth. Because over this time, I've seen the real you. Not just a business titan, but a person worthy of respect. Eleanor's expression shifted subtly. The light filtering through the old cafe window cast dappled shadows on her face, making the moment feel eternal. Thank you, she said softly, the weight of those two words hitting Ryan with surprising force. Asterisk Goodwill update. Eleanor Vance's impression of host, a trustworthy partner. Current Goodwill, 50% asterisk. After leaving the cafe, Ryan didn't go home. He went to an internet cafe. He needed more evidence to counter Harrington and Sterling. The system's newly unlocked business acumen made him preternaturally sensitive to financial data. He soon found a discrepancy in Vance Industries' investment records from the previous year. So that's how it is. At 3 a.m., Ryan stared at the screen, his eyes burning but alight with excitement. Harrington used company funds to invest in Richard Sterling's Shell Corporation and lost nearly $20 million. He quickly compiled the evidence, planning to give it to Eleanor in the morning. But just as he was about to shut down the computer, a news alert popped up. Asterisk exclusive. The real identity of the Vance Industries scandal assistant. Asterisk. The article claimed an investigation had found Ryan had a record of fraud, using similar methods to swindle female entrepreneurs, and even included a doctored police record. The most damaging part was the insinuation that Eleanor might be another victim, and that company funds may have been embezzled. This is insane. Ryan slammed his fist on the desk, earning a glare from the cafe manager. He tried calling Eleanor, but the call went straight to voicemail. It wasn't until 7 a.m. that she called back, her voice exhausted. Just got out of an emergency board meeting. Arthur presented his so-called evidence and demanded I be suspended as CEO. It's all fabricated. Ryan said desperately. I found the proof that Harrington and Sterling are working together. I know. Eleanor's voice was unervingly calm. But public opinion is against us right now. The board gave me 3 days to clear this up, or else. Ryan read between the lines. I'll fix this. Ryan. Eleanor said his name, a note of vulnerability in her voice he'd never heard before. Be careful. After hanging up, Ryan stood on the morning street, filled with a new sense of purpose. It was no longer about a system task or a reward. It was about helping Eleanor, the woman who commanded boardrooms but who could also be tired and who could also be hurt. Asterisk system alert. Host motivation change detected. System upgrading. Asterisk. Ryan blinked. What? But the system offered no further explanation. Ryan shook his head. He had more important things to do. He had to clear his name and expose the conspiracy. And he was running out of time. Ryan stared at the computer screen, his eyes so dry they felt like they were being scraped with sandpaper. He had been working for 18 straight hours, compiling evidence of Arthur Harrington and Richard Sterling's collusion. Outside, the city lights were winking out one by one. Just one last piece. He muttered, fingers tapping away. Suddenly, the code on his screen began to warp and distort as if twisted by an invisible hand. Ryan sat up straight, thinking he was hallucinating, but then the lights in his apartment flickered, and his computer let out a piercing electronic shriek. Asterisk warning. System undergoing external intervention. Asterisk. Ryan had never heard such a frantic alert from the system. He was about to ask what was wrong when a blinding headache shot through his skull as if someone were driving a spike into his temples. He grunted in pain and collapsed to the floor. Asterisk emergency. Unauthorized binding detected. Host Ryan Carter has illegally bonded with a non-designated target. System will now reset, asterisk. What a legal binding. Ryan gritted out, cold sweat pouring down his face. The system switched targets on its own. The air in the room grew heavy. The computer screen dissolved into a blizzard of static. Then a line of blood-red text appeared. Asterisk Goddess Alliance Regulatory System Intervention Initiated. Asterisk. A cold, robotic female voice replaced the familiar system prompts. Host Ryan Carter. Initial binding target was Jessica Miller. Erroneous switch to Eleanor Vance is a protocol violation. This violation will now be corrected. Ryan's mind went blank. He pushed himself up, using the desk for support. Who are you? The Goddess Alliance Regulatory System, responsible for maintaining the operational integrity of the underdog system, the voice announced without emotion. Host has been detected exploiting a system loophole for unauthorized gain. You are now presented with two options. The lights in the room stabilized, and two option boxes appeared on his monitor. Option 1. Terminate current erroneous binding. Rebind with initial target, Jessica Miller. Receive compensation package. Advanced business acumen plus $10 million in seed capital. Option 2. Maintain current binding. The system will incrementally retract all granted abilities. Host will retain only established goodwill relationships. Ryan stared at the screen, his throat tight. What if I don't choose either? The system will initiate a forced reset, erasing all of Eleanor Vance's memories and goodwill toward the host. This is insane. Ryan slammed his fist on the desk. The system switched targets on its own. Why am I being punished for its mistake? The robotic voice was unmoved. Initial parameters are immutable. While Eleanor Vance's composite score is high, she does not fall within the designated target demographic. Final notice. Make your choice within 24 hours, or a forced reset will be automatically executed. The screen flickered and returned to normal. The headache receded like a tide, as if it had all been a bad dream, except for the blood-red text still glowing on the screen. Ryan collapsed into his chair, overwhelmed by a new kind of exhaustion. He had thought he was just playing a game, completing tasks, but he had waded in too deep. Now, he was being forced to choose between his heart and his ambition. His phone vibrated. It was a text from Eleanor. Board meeting has been moved up to 8 a.m. tomorrow. Arthur has more evidence. What's your progress? Ryan looked at the message, a heavy feeling in his chest. He typed a quick reply. I found the smoking gun. See you at the office at 7 a.m. He looked back at the computer screen. The evidence was all there. Irrefutable proof of Harrington using a series of shell companies to embezzle funds from Vance Industries. But now, none of it seemed to matter. The real question was, without the system's abilities, could he still help Eleanor? And more fundamentally, his reasons for being with Eleanor had changed. It was no longer about the system. Ryan shook his head, forcing himself to focus. First things first, deal with the immediate crisis. He compiled the evidence, backing it up onto multiple flash drives. He then tried to use his system-granted hacking skills to prepare for the presentation, but the ability was spotty, like a radio with a bad signal. It's already started, Ryan thought with a bitter smile, and got back to work using his own, more limited programming knowledge. The next morning, Ryan stood in front of the Vance Industries tower, clutching the briefcase with the evidence. He hadn't slept, and his temples throbbed, but what worried him more was the unstable system. One moment he could feel a flicker of precognition. The next he was just a regular guy. Ryan, a familiar voice came from behind him. Eleanor was dressed in a sharp black pantsuit, her hair in a severe chignon, her makeup a perfect mask that couldn't quite hide her exhaustion. Only Ryan could see the faint trace of vulnerability in her eyes. Ms. Vance. He nodded, handing her the briefcase. It's all in here. She took it, her voice low. Are you okay? You look like you haven't slept. You're the one who should be asked that. Ryan managed a weak smile. What's the board's plan for dealing with Harrington's accusations? We'll counter every move. Eleanor's jaw was set. But I need you to stay out of sight for now. Arthur is adamant that you're my kept man. Your presence will only add fuel to the fire. A sharp pain lanced through Ryan's chest, but he knew she was right. I understand. I'll wait in the lounge on the 38th floor. They rode the elevator in silence. Ryan could feel the tension radiating from her like a drawn bowstring. He wanted to say something encouraging, but he couldn't seem to organize a coherent thought. His business acumen was flickering, making him doubt his own judgment. "Ryan," Eleanor said suddenly as the elevator stopped at the 28th floor. "Whatever happens today, thank you for everything." She didn't wait for a response. Striding out of the elevator with the determined click of her heels on the marble floor, her back as straight as ever, as if her parting words had just been a figment of his imagination. Astra System alert. Final notice countdown. 16 hours, 12 minutes. Host, please make your choice. Asterisk. Ryan closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He had never felt so helpless. In the 38th floor lounge, Ryan paced restlessly. Through the glass wall, he could see the executives gathered outside the boardroom. Arthur Harrington, his silver hair slicked back, was chatting with several board members, letting out a grating laugh now and then. Kyle Vance was there too, shooting a smug, challenging look in Ryan's direction. The meeting had been going for half an hour. Ryan tried to use his system abilities to eavesdrop, but they were unreliable. He caught only fragments. A serious breach of company policy. Personal conduct affecting corporate image. Recommend suspension of duties. Suddenly, the boardroom door was thrown open. Eleanor stood in the doorway, her face pale, but her eyes blazing. "Ryan, get in here." Every head turned to stare at him. He walked forward, his mouth dry, feeling like he was walking to his own execution. "Mr. Harrington is questioning the authenticity of the evidence." Eleanor's voice was dangerously calm. "You will explain the technical details." In the room, a dozen pairs of eyes were fixed on him. Arthur Harrington was sitting in Eleanor's chair at the head of the table, a triumphant smirk on his face. "So this is the famous special assistant?" Harrington sneered. "Quite the looker." Ryan's fists clenched at his sides, but Eleanor spoke first. "Arthur, this is a boardroom, not a locker room. Ryan is our security expert, and he has found evidence of your embezzlement." "Absurd." Harrington slammed his hand on the table. "Eleanor, you'd stoop to fabricating lies to slander me, just to deflect from your own scandal." Ryan walked silently to the projector and plugged in his flash drive. A complex diagram of financial flows appeared on the screen. "Distinguished board members, please look here. In March of last year, of the $20 million invested in Blue Ocean Technologies, only $5 million actually reached their account. The rest was funneled through these 3 shell corporations." His explanation was professional and detailed, breaking down even the most obscure technical points into layman's terms. For a moment, Ryan felt the full confidence of his peak system abilities, business acumen, crisis precognition, and presentation skills all working in perfect harmony. But at the most critical moment, as he was about to reveal the link between Harrington and Richard Sterling, a sharp pain tore through his head. The system's abilities vanished as if a plug had been pulled. Ryan's voice faltered. The dense numbers on the screen suddenly became a meaningless jumble. The once clear business logic was now a fog. He stood there, an actor who had forgotten his lines. "What's the matter?" "Go on," Harrington sneered. "Or perhaps you don't actually understand what you're talking about." The atmosphere in the room shifted. A few board members exchanged skeptical glances. Eleanor frowned at Ryan, her expression a mix of confusion and concern. Asterisk warning. System abilities temporarily disabled. Host must make a final choice immediately. Asterisk. Ryan's shirt was soaked with cold sweat. He took a deep breath, deciding to go for broke. "Apologies, I felt a bit dizzy." He pointed to a set of figures on the screen. "To put it simply, Mr. Harrington funneled at least $15 million through these companies, which ultimately landed in accounts controlled by Richard Sterling. I have the complete bank records to prove it." Harrington's face paled. "Nonsense. This so-called evidence could easily be fabricated." "Then let's have a forensic accounting firm verify it," Eleanor said coolly. "In the meantime, I move that the board suspend Mr. Harrington's duties pending the results of the investigation." The vote was surprisingly close, 6-5. Eleanor had won for now. Harrington stormed out, shooting a final, venomous glare at Ryan. "This isn't over." After the meeting, as the board members filed out, Eleanor pulled Ryan aside. "What happened in there?" Ryan didn't know how to explain. "I guess I was just nervous." Eleanor gave him a long, searching look, but was interrupted by her phone. She answered, and her expression froze. What? Jesse. Richard, you wouldn't dare. She hung up, her hands trembling slightly. Richard took Jesse. He said, he's filing for a restraining order to keep me from seeing her. That's impossible. Ryan blurted out. Jessica's an adult. But he found a loophole. Jesse's medical record from her bout with depression last year. Eleanor said, a rare note of panic in her voice. He's claiming my neglect led to her psychological distress. Ryan had never seen her so undone. She was always the one in control, but now she just looked like a desperate mother. He instinctively reached for a system ability to help, but found it was still offline. Asterisk final notice. Host must make a choice. Time remaining. 8 hours, 47 minutes. Asterisk. We'll go get her, Ryan said firmly. Jessica has the right to choose for herself. The law is on our side. Eleanor shook her head. You don't understand. Richard's greatest talent is manipulation. If he's already convinced Jesse, then we'll convince her to come back, Ryan said, taking her hand in a surprisingly bold move. Trust me. Eleanor looked down at their joined hands, was silent for a moment, then gave a small nod. Okay. Asterisk Goodwill update. Eleanor Vance's impression of host, a reliable anchor. Current Goodwill, 60% asterisk. On the way back to her office, Ryan made his decision. No matter what the system offered, he wouldn't give up the connection he'd built with Eleanor. What were abilities and rewards compared to the genuine trust of another person? But the question remained, without the system, could he still protect her? At 4 p.m., Ryan sat alone on the company rooftop, staring at the system's final ultimatum on his phone. Choose. 1. Rebind with Jessica Miller. 2. Maintain status quo. Lose abilities. 3. System reset. The setting sun painted the city in shades of gold. Ryan thought about the last few months. The initial humiliation of delivering breakfast, the thrill of his new powers, his awe of Eleanor, and the slow discovery of the vulnerable woman beneath the powerful exterior. I choose option 2, he said softly, his finger hovering over the screen. Release system binding. Retain existing relationships. Asterisk confirm selection. This choice is irreversible. Host will lose all system-granted abilities and retain only the target's current goodwill. Asterisk confirm. An unprecedented wave of pain washed over him, as if something was being physically ripped from his mind. He felt his knees, his vision going black, his ears ringing. When the agony finally subsided minutes later, he felt a strange sense of lightness, as if a heavy weight had finally been lifted from his shoulders. Asterisk system debinding in progress. Final reminder. Target goodwill is 60%, but host is now an ordinary person. Please carefully evaluate relationship sustainability. Asterisk. Ryan laughed, shakily getting to his feet. Screw you. Real feelings don't need a rating. The screen flickered and went dark. Ryan took a deep breath, savoring the feeling of being normal. No precognition, no hacking skills, none of the enhancements that had made him more than he was. Just himself, and Eleanor Vance's 60% goodwill. It was enough. His phone rang. It was Eleanor. Richard has agreed to let Jesse see me, but it has to be in a public place. I've arranged to meet them at the Chambord restaurant. Can you come with me? Of course, Ryan answered without hesitation. I'm on my way. After hanging up, he looked one last time at his now ordinary phone. The challenges ahead, the boardroom battles, the media storm, Eleanor's family crisis, will be much harder without the system. But this time, he would face them as himself. Ryan didn't know if Eleanor would ultimately accept an ordinary man with no superpowers, but he had decided that no matter what, he would stand by her side, even without a system, even with the road ahead full of thorns. The lighting at Chambord was soft, almost romantic. Ryan sat at a corner table, his fingers drumming nervously on the tablecloth. It had been 6 hours since the system debinding, and he could still feel a sense of absence. Like a phantom limb, his mind still remembered the weight of the powers he no longer had. They're late, Eleanor said, glancing at her watch, her voice tight. She was wearing a pale gray cashmere sweater, her hair down, making her look softer and less formidable than usual. But Ryan could see the anxiety in her eyes. Jessica hadn't answered a single one of her texts in 3 days. They'll be here, Ryan said, trying to sound reassuring, but finding he could no longer accurately predict anything. Without the system, he was running on pure human intuition. Finally, a familiar figure appeared at the restaurant entrance. Jessica Miller walked in, arm in arm with a middle-aged man. The man was tall and impeccably dressed in a dark blue suit, his features similar to Jessica's, but his eyes held a worldly, calculating glint. Richard Sterling. Eleanor whispered the name, her hand clenching into a fist under the table. Ryan quietly covered her trembling hand with his own. Stay calm. Jesse needs to see you composed. Eleanor took a deep breath and straightened her back. By the time Richard and Jessica reached their table, she was once again the picture of grace and control. Jesse, she said softly, her gaze not even gracing her ex-husband. Jessica bit her lip, avoiding her mother's eyes and clutching her father's arm, as if for protection. Her heavy makeup couldn't hide the dark circles that spoke of sleepless nights. Eleanor, long time no see. Richard smiled, his voice as smooth and rich as expensive wine. You look well. Seems the tabloids haven't bothered you much. Eleanor finally looked at him, her eyes like chips of ice. Richard, I have no interest in catching up. I'm here to see my daughter. Of course, of course. Richard pulled out a chair for Jessica and then sat himself. But before that, I think we need to clear up a few misunderstandings. Ryan saw Richard's eyes linger on him for a moment, full of appraisal and a faint, dismissive sneer. This must be your special assistant. Richard's lips curled. More ordinary than his pictures. Ryan is my friend. Eleanor's voice was sharp, and a former classmate of Jesse's. Oh, Richard raised an eyebrow. What a coincidence. Jessica finally spoke, her voice chillingly unfamiliar. It's not a coincidence. Mom, he's the stalker I told you about. The restaurant's soft jazz suddenly seemed jarringly loud. Ryan felt Eleanor stiffen beside him. She turned to him, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. I admit, bringing you breakfast was a mistake, Ryan said, looking directly at Jessica, his voice calm. But my relationship with your mother started as purely professional and grew into a friendship. Friendship? Jessica scoffed. Then do you know she has chronic stomach problems? Do you know her least favorite color is purple? Do you know that Jesse, Eleanor cut her off. Ryan has been a huge help to me. The company's recent crisis, if it weren't for him. Jessica's voice rose, attracting stares from nearby tables. What could a programmer who just graduated a few years ago do to help you? Mom, he's playing you. All that supposed business talent is an act. A knot of pain tightened in Ryan's gut. Jessica had, unintentionally, spoken a partial truth. Those talents hadn't been his own. But now, he had to prove that, even without the system, he could still be of use to Eleanor. Mr. Sterling, Ryan said, changing tactics and turning to Richard. I imagine you've been in close contact with Mr. Harrington lately? The smile on Richard's face didn't waver. Just business. Arthur is a very insightful man. Is he? Ryan pulled out his phone and brought up a file. Then you must know that the board suspended him this morning. The evidence of his embezzlement is conclusive. Richard's eyes flickered. Young man, business isn't so simple. No, it's not, Ryan agreed. For instance, this $5 million transfer that went through an offshore company and ended up in your consulting firm's account is quite complex. Eleanor looked at Ryan in surprise. He hadn't shown her this piece of evidence. A crack finally appeared in Richard's mask. I have no idea what you're talking about. Jesse, let's go. It seems your mother isn't here to reconcile today. Wait. Eleanor reached for her daughter, but Jessica pulled away. Jessica stood up, tears in her eyes. Mom, why are you always like this? My whole life, you've trusted strangers over me. Now you won't even listen to Dad. At least he's willing to spend time with me. Jessica was practically shouting now. Instead of just working all the time like you. She turned and ran out of the restaurant. Richard stood up slowly, adjusting his suit. You see, Eleanor, Jessie is an adult. She can make her own judgments. If you truly cared for her, you'd respect her choices. He gave Ryan a meaningful look. And by the way, that so-called evidence is legally meaningless. My partnership with Arthur is completely above board. I'd advise you to keep your little friend on a leash before he gets you into real trouble. After Richard left, Eleanor sagged back in her chair, drained of all energy. Her makeup was still perfect, but the light had gone out of her eyes. That evidence? She asked in a low voice. I found it last night, Ryan admitted. It's not strong enough on its own. I wanted to find more before I told you. Eleanor shook her head. No, I mean, how did you find it? At the board meeting today, you froze up explaining the technical details, but now. Ryan knew he couldn't hide it anymore. He took a deep breath. Ms. Vance, I have to be honest with you. My previous, exceptional performance, it wasn't entirely my own ability. Eleanor watched him quietly, waiting. It was like a talent I suddenly had, and then suddenly lost, Ryan explained, choosing a version of the truth that was strange but not impossible. But my desire to help you is real. Eleanor was silent for so long that Ryan thought she was going to get up and leave. Finally, she asked softly, Why are you telling me this? Because I don't want to pretend anymore. Ryan looked her directly in the eye. Even without those abilities, I still want to be on your side. Maybe I can't be of much help to you now, but that's enough. Eleanor interrupted, her voice surprisingly gentle. You know, at the board meeting today, when you weren't so perfect anymore, I was actually relieved. Ryan was stunned. What? The old you was too perfect. Unrealistically perfect, Eleanor said with a sad smile. Like the ideal partner I imagined when I was young. Brilliant, capable, always knowing the right thing to say and do. But that's not a real person. The restaurant lights cast soft shadows on her face, making her look more vulnerable, but also more real than ever before. The person you are now, she continued, you get nervous, you make mistakes, you don't always know what to do next. That's a real, living person. Ryan's heart pounded in his chest. Then, what about Jesse? We'll figure it out. Eleanor's voice regained its firmness. Richard wants to use Jesse to hurt me. It won't be that easy. She signaled the waiter for the check, then said to Ryan, Take me home. We need to make a plan. As they walked out into the cool autumn night, her heels clicked on the pavement. Ryan walked beside her, the space between them so small he could almost feel the warmth of her body. Ryan, Eleanor stopped suddenly. You said those abilities are gone. Do you regret it? No regrets, he answered without a shred of hesitation. Those abilities gave me the chance to get close to you, but what made me stay was you. Not a system target, not a task, but the real Eleanor Vance. Asterisk Goodwill update. Eleanor Vance's impression of host. Someone to be cherished. Current Goodwill. 75% asterisk. The prompt surprised Ryan. Hadn't the system been deactivated? He quickly dismissed it as a residual echo, or maybe just his imagination. Eleanor didn't respond to his confession, but when she started walking again, her fingers brushed gently against the back of his hand, a silent promise. Eleanor's apartment was warmer and more lived in than Ryan had imagined. The living room shelves were packed with business books and a few volumes of poetry. A half-finished cup of herbal tea sat on the coffee table, and the balcony was lush with green plants. Make yourself at home, she said, taking off her jacket to reveal the silk blouse underneath. Want something to drink? Just water is fine. Ryan perched awkwardly on the edge of the sofa. Eleanor poured 2 glasses of water and sat down next to him, so close he could smell the faint scent of her perfume. Now, tell me everything you found on Richard. For the next 2 hours, they went over every clue. Ryan was surprised to find that even without his hacking skills, he could still identify key information based on the experience he'd gained and his knowledge of the company. Look here, he said, pointing to a financial report on his laptop. Richard's consulting firm saw a 300% increase in revenue last year, but their staffing and overhead costs barely changed. That doesn't make sense. Eleanor leaned closer, her hair brushing against Ryan's arm. You're right. He's laundering money. And, Ryan continued, I noticed his connection with Arthur Harrington goes back 3 years, which is right when Harrington started opposing your strategic plans. Eleanor gave a cold laugh. So he was planning this all along. Use Arthur to tie me up in the boardroom, then use Jesse. Her voice caught. Ryan hesitated, then gently put an arm around her shoulder. We'll fix this. Jesse has just been misled. You don't know Richard. Eleanor's voice was low. He's a master manipulator. He used the same tactics on me years ago, almost made me give up my controlling stake in the company. It was the first time she had ever spoken of her marriage. Ryan listened quietly. When we got married, I was just a mid-level executive, she continued, her gaze distant. When Jesse was 5, I wanted to start my own company. He was completely against it. When I insisted, he changed. Her fingers traced the rim of her glass. First, he started secretly moving our joint assets. Then, when I needed his support the most, he filed for divorce, demanding I give up control of the company as a condition. But you didn't. Of course not. Eleanor looked up, a stubborn light in her eyes. I would have walked away with nothing to save the company. Looking back, it was the best decision I ever made. Ryan suddenly understood her overprotectiveness of her daughter. She didn't want Jessica to suffer the way she had, but in doing so, had unintentionally pushed her away. I'll go talk to Jessie tomorrow, Ryan suggested. As a third party, maybe she'll listen. Eleanor shook her head. It's too dangerous. If Richard finds out you're interfering, then let him, Ryan said firmly. I'm not afraid of him. Eleanor stared at him, her gaze deep, as if she could see right through him. Why? She asked softly. Why are you doing all this for me? You don't have those abilities anymore. Ryan took a deep breath and decided to tell her everything. Because I'm in love with you, Eleanor. Not because of a system task, not for any reward, but because of you, the strong, brilliant, stubborn, sometimes controlling, real you. Eleanor's eyes widened slightly. Her lips parted, but she said nothing. I know it sounds crazy, Ryan went on. The age gap, our different stations in life, the complication with Jessie. But I can't help it. He never got to finish. Eleanor leaned forward and silenced him with a kiss. It was soft and brief, but it sent a jolt of electricity through him. You idiot, she whispered when they parted, her eyes holding a tenderness Ryan had never seen. Did you think I couldn't tell? Ryan was stunned, his mind a complete blank. You? When did you? From the day you insisted on making me that broth. Eleanor smiled. No one goes to that much trouble just to impress their boss. She stood and walked toward the bedroom, pausing at the door. We'll go see Jessie together tomorrow. For now, you need a rest. The guest room is ready for you. Ryan sat frozen on the sofa, his fingers drifting to his lips, where he could still feel the ghost of her kiss. He couldn't believe what had just happened. No system, no task, just two real people and a real connection. Asterisk Goodwill update. Eleanor Vance's impression of host. A person to be loved. Current Goodwill. 90% asterisk. The prompt appeared again, but Ryan no longer cared about the score. Real love never needed a system to rate it. The morning sun streamed through the guest room window. Ryan opened his eyes, momentarily disoriented. The unfamiliar ceiling, the feel of high thread count linen sheets, the faint scent of jasmine in the air. This wasn't his apartment. The memories flooded back. Last night's confession, the feather-like kiss, the rare tenderness in Eleanor's eyes. Ryan shot up in bed and grabbed his phone. 8:20 a.m. He'd slept in. Hearing a faint noise from outside the room, Ryan took a quick shower, threw on his now wrinkled clothes, and nervously opened the door. Eleanor was at the dining table, reading a tablet. She looked up when she heard him. She was already dressed in a business suit, her hair in a perfect chignon, her makeup flawless, as if the vulnerable woman from last night had been a dream. But when her eyes met his, her lips curved into a small smile. Morning, she said, setting her tablet down. Coffee's in the kitchen. Help yourself. Ryan nodded and walked awkwardly to the kitchen. It all felt surreal. He had spent the night in Eleanor's apartment, albeit in the guest room. He had confessed his feelings, and she had responded. The board meets at 3 p.m. Eleanor's voice came from the dining room. Arthur is suspended, but his faction is still active. I need more proof of his collusion with Richard. Ryan returned with a mug of coffee and sat across from her. I have an idea. Instead of confronting Jessie directly, let's arrange an accidental meeting. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. What kind of meeting? Jessie goes to the Cat Cafe in the South District every Wednesday morning to sketch, Ryan said. I check her social media. If you were to happen to be there, she'll think I'm stalking her, Eleanor said with a wry smile. And Richard probably has someone watching her. Ryan shook his head. You're not going? I am. Eleanor's fingers tightened around her coffee mug. That's too dangerous. If Richard finds out, he won't, Ryan said firmly. I just need a few minutes to talk to her. If she doesn't believe me, I'll at least get her to watch this. He pulled out his phone and played a short video. He'd recorded Eleanor last night without her knowledge as she spoke about Jessica, tears streaming down her face. Eleanor stared at the screen, her expression complex. When did you? Last night while you were in the shower, Ryan admitted. I know it was invasive, but sometimes seeing is more persuasive than hearing. Eleanor was silent for a long moment before sighing. Fine, but at the first sign of trouble, you get out of there. Yes, boss. Ryan grinned, earning a mock-exasperated eye roll from her. Asterisk Goodwill update. Eleanor Vance's impression of host. A trusted partner. Current Goodwill. 95% asterisk the system prompt flashed again. Ryan frowned. He'd definitely unbound the system. Why was it still here? Shaking off the question, he focused on the task at hand. The Perfect Place Cat Cafe was tucked away on a quiet side street, its decor warm and vintage. A bell tinkled as Ryan pushed the door open. He spotted Jessica immediately, sitting in a corner with a sketchbook, a ginger cat snoozing in her lap. Ryan ordered a latte and, as he walked past her table, accidentally dropped his bag. Oh, sorry, my fault, he said, bending down to pick it up, then pretending to just notice her. Jessica. She looked up, her expression instantly turning cold. You again. Are you following me? No, Ryan lowered his voice. I came to apologize. At the restaurant, I shouldn't have interfered in your family's business. Jessica glanced around nervously. My dad's people could be nearby. You should leave. Now. Give me 5 minutes, Ryan pleaded. Just 5. If you still want me to go after that, I'll disappear. Jessica hesitated, then finally nodded. 5 minutes. Sit over there. Don't make it look like we know each other. Ryan sat at a diagonal table, separated from her by a sleeping ragdoll cat. He chose his words carefully. First, I admit I had a reason for approaching you initially. But working at Vance Industries, I got to see a side of your mother that no one else does. Like what? Jessica sneered. Like the locked drawer in her office, filled with your photos and artwork. From the time you were 5 until now, not a single one is missing, Ryan said softly. Like the reminders in her phone. Jesse's period, Jesse's dentist appointment. Like her computer password being your birthday. Jessica's fingers, which had been stroking the cat, slowed. I know she's not a perfect mother, Ryan continued. She's too busy, too controlling. But she loves you more than anything. The father you're with now. Stop it. Jessica cut him off. You don't know my dad. He's cared about me all these years. My mom was the one who kept us apart. Ryan took a deep breath and decided to risk it. Then do you know who stayed by your bedside for 3 straight nights when you had pneumonia at age 6? Jessica frowned. My mom was on a business trip. It was Dad. It was your mother. Ryan shook his head. She had just started her company. The funding was about to fall through, but she dropped everything to be at the hospital with you. You just don't remember because of the high fever. How would you know that? Jessica's voice began to tremble. Because she cried when she told me about it last night. Ryan pulled out his phone, turned down the volume, and played the video. On the screen, the ever-composed Eleanor Vance was weeping. When Jessie was 6, the doctor said it might be severe pneumonia. I was so scared I couldn't sleep. I almost lost our angel investor because of it, but I don't regret a thing. Tears welled in Jessica's eyes. She quickly turned her head away, but Ryan saw that he had gotten through to her. Where is your father now? Ryan asked softly. He's on a business trip. Jessica's voice was thick with emotion. He said it was an important meeting. A business trip the day before the board votes on firing your mother? Ryan shook his head. Jessie, you're a smart woman. Don't you see how convenient that is? Jessica was silent for a long time. Finally, she whispered, my mom. Is she okay? No, Ryan told her honestly. She's worried about you, and she's worried about the company. But most of all, she's worried you're being used to hurt yourself. The ginger cat hopped off Jessica's lap. She stared at the empty space, then said suddenly, my dad has a safe in his study. I saw the combination once when I was a kid. Ryan's heart pounded. Do you know what's inside? No, but Jessica bit her lip. I could go look. That's too dangerous. If your father finds out. He won't. Jessica looked up, her eyes glinting with the same stubborn fire as her mother's. He really is out of town until tomorrow. I need to know the truth. Ryan hesitated. This was their best chance to find evidence, but he couldn't put Jessica in danger. Let me come with you, he said finally. Jessica shook her head. You're too conspicuous. The security guards at my dad's place know you. He gave them special instructions after the scandal broke. She took out her phone. Give me your number. I'll call you if I find anything. Ryan typed in his number, then hesitated and sent her the video of Eleanor. Whatever you find, just remember that your mother loves you. That will never change. Jessica didn't answer, but Ryan saw her save the video to her phone. At 2:45 p.m., Ryan paced anxiously in the hallway outside the Vance Industries boardroom. There was still no word from Jessica, and the board meeting was about to start. He tried calling her, but it went straight to voicemail. Ryan. Eleanor stepped out of the elevator, flanked by her legal team. Any news? Ryan shook his head. She hasn't contacted me. Eleanor's jaw tightened. We have to go in. Harrington's lawyer just filed a new motion to have my duties as CEO suspended immediately, pending an investigation into financial irregularities. What investigation? They're claiming I embezzled company funds to pay your improper compensation, Eleanor said with a cold smile. It's ridiculous, but it's enough to start another media firestorm. Ryan clenched his fists. I won't let them. Eleanor reached out and straightened his tie, a surprisingly intimate gesture. Whatever happens, she said softly, thank you for everything. The boardroom door opened and Kyle Vance stepped out, a triumphant smirk on his face. Ms. Vance, everyone is waiting for you. Eleanor squared her shoulders and strode into the room. Ryan followed, his heart pounding. The room was full. Though Harrington was suspended, two of his staunchest allies were present. The meeting deteriorated quickly. Harrington's lawyer presented a cascade of so-called evidence, accusing Eleanor of abusing her authority. Several board members began to waver. Just as the vote was about to begin, the boardroom doors were thrown open. Everyone turned to look. Jessica Miller stood in the doorway, pale but resolute, a manila envelope in her hand. I apologize for the interruption, she said, her voice shaking but clear. I have important documents for the board. Eleanor stood up. Jesse, how did you? Ignoring her mother, Jessica walked straight to the chairman of the board and handed him the envelope. These are for my father's safe. They include his secret agreement with Mr. Harrington, as well as records of multiple financial transactions. The room fell silent. The chairman put on his glasses and examined the documents, his expression growing more and more grim. If these documents are authentic, he said finally, they indicate that Mr. Richard Sterling and Mr. Arthur Harrington engaged in illicit business dealings involving the misappropriation of Vance Industries funds. Impossible, one of Harrington's allies shouted. Those documents must be forged. They're not forged, Jessica said, finally turning to her mother, tears in her eyes. Dad, Richard also kept the real reason he pushed for the divorce. He wouldn't sign the papers unless you gave up control of the company, because you had discovered he embezzled money from your first round of funding. Eleanor's lips trembled, but she said nothing. Jessica continued. He kept us apart all these years, not because you wouldn't allow it, but because he needed me to resent you, so I could be a tool to hurt you. An elderly board member stood. Young lady, these are very serious allegations. Are you certain you want to make them public? I'm certain. Jessica's voice grew stronger. Because I love my mother, and I respect the company she built. I can't stand by and watch it be destroyed by petty, greedy men. The statement landed like a bomb. The board members began passing the documents around, their whispers growing louder. Harrington's allies looked ill, and Kyle Vance had already slipped out of the room. The chairman rapped his gavel. Given this new evidence, I propose we suspend today's vote and form a special committee to investigate this matter thoroughly. All in favor? The vote was a landslide, 8-3. The committee was formed, and Eleanor's position as CEO was, for the moment, secure. After the meeting, Eleanor and Jessica embraced in the hallway. Ryan stood at a distance, not wanting to intrude, but Jessica suddenly waved him over. Ryan, come here. He walked over. Jessica looked him in the eye. Thank you for helping me see the truth. Then, unexpectedly, she stood on her toes and kissed his cheek. Take care of my mom. She turned and walked away, leaving Ryan standing stunned, his cheek burning. Eleanor watched her daughter leave. She's grown up, she said softly. Yeah, Ryan nodded. She's strong like you. Eleanor turned to him, a complex light in her eyes. No, she's much braver than I am. At least she has the courage to admit her mistakes and to forgive. She took his hand. Maybe it's time I learned to do the same. Asterisk Goodwill update. Eleanor Vance's impression of host. The love of a lifetime. Current goodwill, 100% asterisk. Asterisk ding. True love energy threshold reached. True love system successfully activated, asterisk. Ryan's eyes widened. The system was back? And what the hell was a true love system? What is it? Eleanor asked, noticing his expression. And nothing. Ryan managed a smile. Just really happy. Eleanor smiled back, a genuine, warm smile. Come on, take me home. Tonight. I think I'd like to cook. You can cook. Ryan asked, surprised. Not a bit, she admitted freely, which is why I'll need your guidance. After all, you're still my special assistant, aren't you? She put a playful emphasis on the last two words, a twinkle in her eye that reminded Ryan of the powerful CEO he'd first met. But now he saw so much more, a real woman who could cry and laugh, who could be vulnerable and strong. And the system, whatever it had become, it no longer mattered. Real love didn't need a system to tell you the score. 1 year later, at the Vance Industries annual gala, Ryan stood on stage accepting the appointment of Executive Vice President of Technology. The applause was deafening. Eleanor sat in the front row, her eyes shining with pride. Beside her, Jessica, now a sophomore in college and a summer intern at the company, clapped enthusiastically. Later that night, back at the penthouse, Ryan found Eleanor in her study, reviewing documents. He walked up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. Ms. Vance, it's time to rest. She leaned back into his embrace. Old habits. You, on the other hand, had quite a bit to drink. I'm fine, Ryan said, kissing her hair. Where's Jessie? Back at her dorm. She has an exam tomorrow. Eleanor turned in his arms to face him. Ryan, thank you. For everything. He was about to respond when a familiar, silent prompt appeared in his mind. Asterisk true love task complete. Reward, a lifetime of happiness. Asterisk. This time, Ryan didn't feel surprise, only a quiet sense of rightness. He answered in his thoughts, thanks. But even without the reward, I've already received the greatest gift of all. He lowered his head and kissed her, knowing with absolute certainty that this wasn't part of any system's design, but the simple, inevitable gravity of two hearts finding their way to each other. Outside, a bright moon hung in the sky, casting a gentle, knowing light on a love story that was once impossible.